So I get the news on the phone that it's a tumour, it's cancer. I think there's 2 blueprints that my body holds. For me, I identified 5 different conditions that I think my body thrives best in. The healthier the cells are, the higher the vibrational frequency it is. I signed up to Washington retreat.
Can you explain what happened at the event?
Oh my word, wow. When I went to see my oncologist to get the results, she said the tumour had grown by 3 times from what it was in May. And I was so disappointed because I'd realised that this might help somebody else. Bear with me, it's still uncomfortable for me to talk about this.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Intelligent Nature podcast. I am so excited about the podcast you're about to listen to here. Do not want to miss, especially if you have cancer, especially if you're struggling in any way, shape or form in life. Karen's story is going to truly amaze you, and this is honestly just the start of many podcasts to come. So now I would like to welcome Karen Kay to the podcast. I'm so excited to be introducing you to our audience today. It's going to be truly amazing. Now, Karen, I just wanted to know, before we delve into the details of your cancer healing meditation and your new book, who you were before all of this. Can you take us back in your life as a mother, a professional swimmer, and somebody with a scientific mind?
Hi, Paul. Lovely to see you today. So if I take myself back, it's hard to know where to start, really, because I think all of these thinkings and ways of being start from a very young age. And for me, I grew up in the north of England in a culture of stiff upper lip and kind of just no complaints, just get on with it type culture. I didn't realize I was growing up in that culture when I was growing up in it. It was just what we all were like. So from a very young age, I learned to kind of not listen to my body or my head, if you will. I just had to fit in with the culture around me. And at that young age, I had no awareness of any kind of chatter that was going on. For me, it was just my background music, if you will, inside my head. So that was kind of where inside my head was at. But from who was I've always loved swimming. I'm a big water person. From a very young age, I've swum competitively. I've been involved in all sorts of clubs and competed at national level, international level. I'm a master swimmer now, and I still love swimming and I still train. So that's been a constant through my life. And as an athlete, with an athlete mentality, it's very much fits in with the culture I mentioned earlier, where you just get on with it. You don't really consider how your body's feeling or how you're feeling about how it's feeling for yourself mentally or physically. You just have a goal and you just work towards it and you just get on with it. So that kind of fitted well with my culture, if you will. So I would decide what I was going to try and achieve, and I would just go at it regardless of what pain it caused me, all levels of pain. And I was very successful. And then as a mum and a wife and in my career and as a family member, I kind of, that approach was just how I did everything. So I was not a very vulnerable person. I wasn't very connected with my emotions. I would be quick to anger. I was kind and I was thoughtful, and I would try my hardest in everything I did. And, I don't want to be too hard on myself. I was a good person, and I still am a good person. But I wasn't an all-round whole person in the way that I'm starting to be now. So that kind of maturity, I suppose, has come over time. And there's been a few moments in my life where, you've kind of realized that you're not happy, basically, with what you're doing. And I've had these kind of intuitive moments where I've just said, right, I'm just not going to carry on with that anymore. So I left a career at a major bank after 16 years, even though I had a very stable and well-paid job, and I just decided to leave because it just didn't feel like the right thing for me to do. And at the time I didn't understand that, but it felt really kind of instinctive for me to do that. So I just, there was the start really of me starting to listen to more of that intuitive voice, even though at that time I still didn't even know there was a voice. It was still background.
Could you actually share with the audience when you first realized there was actually something wrong with you and what happened when you received your cancer diagnosis? And like,
Yeah.
mother, what did this do to you emotionally, physically, and mentally?
So it kind of started before the cancer diagnosis, actually. A year before, I was, like I said, I'm a swimmer and I was training for swimming events all my life, but I decided to do a long distance cycle event in Dubai. And it was in November, so we had to train over the summer in the heat. And we were getting up at really early in the morning to get out training. And on one particular day, I went out on my own, and at the furthest point from my car, obviously it's always going to be that point, my heart decided to go into arrhythmia. So I had a heart episode, and I had to kind of sort myself out because I was on my own out in the desert. I managed to get myself back to a safer place and it settled down. But it then carried on going in and out of rhythm. And in the end, I was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. And at that point, I was given a cardiac, cardioversion. Couldn't remember what it was called, a cardioversion to correct the rhythm because it went into permanent AF. And for me, that was the first time that my body had really rebelled against me. So I'd all the way through had this mindset that I mentioned earlier of like, okay, what's my goal? I'm just going to go for it. And regardless of the pain, I'm going to get there. And this was the first time where I was like, my body going, you can't do this. So it was a bit of a shock for me. It was a manageable shock because it was managed through drugs and through changing my approach and through having this procedure. But it really shook me up because I'd always made the assumption that I could use this approach to deal with anything that came up in my life. So being a mum, I'd never worried about my mortality or my health because I'm healthy, fit person. And this was my first moment of going, okay, this is maybe my body is trying to tell me something. So that resolved itself over the next 4 months with the cardioversion. And then 12 months later, it went back into AF, and I had to have a cardioablation, which is a more detailed procedure which goes into the heart and freezes some of the cells in the heart. And that's been successful. So that was my first moment. And then literally within about 2 weeks of having that cardiac ablation, I started to get pain in my stomach, which again was unusual for me because usually my pains are in my joints or my muscles or my knees or my athlete pains. And I had these stomach pains and they were keeping me awake at night. So I took myself to the doctor, and an investigation followed, which then resulted in them telling me I had a tumour under my stomach. At the time, they thought it might be in my pancreas, but thankfully it wasn't. So that was like the next blow, if you will. I felt like I was just being given one after another of these messages to say, you've got to stop and you've got to start listening. And as a mum, it was frightening because my children at the time were young teenagers. So they needed me still. And my role all the way through has been to put them first, as all parents do. So the thought that I might not be around or capable of bringing them up and help and support them was devastating. But at that point, I was still in the same mindset. I was like, it's all right. I just effort it through. I have a goal. I'm going to get fixed and I'm going to fix myself through this same approach of like, let's just push all the way until we get the answer that we want. So that's kind of how that diagnosis happened. Now, I remember I remember they did a biopsy through my stomach lining on this tumour. And I remember there was a phone call in the car park at school from the doctor to tell me there's good and there's bad news. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? So I get the news on the phone that it's a tumour, it's cancer, but the good news is it's slow growing and it's containable. It's discrete, it's one place by the looks of it. I was like, okay, great, I'll go with the good news. So we had surgery to remove that tumour, but when they did the surgery, they found it was actually in a it was a lymph node. It was like 2 centimeters, like this big. And it was actually in the lymph node. The outside cells were lymph cells. So they said it's a secondary, and now we need to find the primary. They really did investigate everything, and they couldn't find the primary anywhere. But they said it's a type of tumour called neuroendocrine tumour cancer, which I was told at the time was quite manageable, a bit like whack-a-mole type thing. You just keep finding them and taking them out. So I was quite relaxed about it, if you will, because of the way that I've been reassured that we just have a minor surgery, we take a tumour out, if we find another one, we just do the same thing. So though it was devastating, I also felt like I could see how I could apply my mindset of we just keep finding these things, sorting them out, move on, finding them, sorting them out, a bit like a project plan. So that was how I kind of went about that.
So how many actual surgeries did you, it sounds like you had to have quite a lot of surgeries there.
Yeah.
How many surgeries did you actually end up having?
So
different types of therapies and stuff that they suggest?
Yeah. So for the cancer, I had that tumour removed. And then because it's a slow growing cancer, the options are limited about how it can be treated. So with a faster growing cancer, you can use chemotherapy because chemotherapy attacks the fastest growing cells. And because there's a difference between the fastest growing cells, which are the cancer, and the healthy cells, it's easy for the drug to kind of attack the fast growing ones and leave the healthy ones relatively okay, which is why people lose their hair and things like that, because those are the fastest growing cells in a human. So those are the most affected ones, but the rest of, and the immune system obviously is also affected because they're also fast growing, but the slower growing cells in a human aren't so affected by chemo. So that was that, but that wasn't an option for me because the difference between the speed that my cancer cells were growing and my healthy cells are growing wasn't big enough to allow the chemo to attack only the cancer cells. It would have also, if it was going to go for the cancer cells, it would have gone for too many of my healthy cells as well. It wouldn't have been able to be specific in any way. So chemo wasn't an option.
Okay.
It's my dog.
Yeah, it's okay. She's just angry. She's like, yeah, I didn't like that happening to mommy. So
they still, it's okay. They said to me, this would have been about January time, 23. They said to me, let's do watch and wait. So they did a PET scan. They couldn't find anything else. And then which was a big relief, though we still didn't have the answer about where the primary was. So I knew I had a time bomb sitting inside me because this secondary couldn't have come from nowhere. But we couldn't find the primary. So I had to live with this situation. And 12 months later, they did another PET scan. But during that 12 months, I have to be honest, I wasn't worrying about having cancer every day. I was just getting on with my life. I was just carrying on in the same way I always had about everything else. And then when in December 23, I had a PET scan, and then they found 2 tumours. So now I have a tumour in my liver and a tumour in my stomach. That was for me the big awakening of, oh, right, okay, I can't just ignore this. This is serious, and this is just going to keep getting worse. So at that point, they had lots of medical appointments, and then I had major surgery on the 15th of February 24, which was 9-10 hour surgery, and they removed 15% of my liver, my gallbladder, 15% of my stomach. And I had to replumb my stomach back into my intestine further down. which was all successful. They found the tumour on my stomach, which they couldn't see very well with all of the investigative stuff they'd done, but they found it. So the primary was found. The secondary in my liver was found and removed. And then I had a really difficult recovery. So it's quite common when you have a major procedure like this that affects your gastric system that you end up with some temporary paralysis of the system where it just kind of goes into shock for a period of time, short period of time, usually just a few days, to recover from what's happened to it. But for me, it went on for weeks and weeks. So this paralysis of my stomach and my small intestine was, I think the small intestine paralysis is called ileus, and that went on for about 3 or 4 weeks, and the stomach paralysis went on longer. So I basically couldn't ingest anything at all. So there was no food going into my body during this period of time, because the process, which is called peristalsis, which is it's a muscle movement that moves food all the way through it constantly. It's autonomic. So it constantly is moving food through the back of your throat, all the way down to your stomach, through your gut and out the other end. That was still. It wasn't moving. There was no flow of food. So I had to have a TPN tube into my throat, into the blood vessel, into my neck, and they fed me through that. And then eventually when my intestine woke up, they then put a nasal gastric tube into my nose, right down through my stomach into my intestine. And I had to tube feed myself. But I remember I asked to go home. I was in hospital for about 5 or 6 weeks. Which wasn't the plan, because I thought I would be in and out in 10 days. So my poor husband had to do everything for all of that time and come see me and sort everything out. So it was a lot. It was a very stressful time. And there were definitely very dark days there where I made the mistake of Googling what life can be like if this doesn't resolve itself. And it's a very difficult life to be living like that. And in the end, I just got to the point where I was like, I want to go home. I want to see my family. I want to be in my bed. I want to see my dog. I want to go home. And I asked if they could let me home. So, because what was happening, every time they they asked me to try to eat something, it would get stuck in my stomach because it couldn't move. It would swell up with the fluid, which this stomach's gone through major surgery. And then I would just, basically too much information, but I would just vomit. Yeah. Liters and liters at a time. It was horrible. So once the tubes went in, the first tube went in, I went home, immediately I vomited it all up, the whole tube, everything. And then they put it back in again. So over that period of time, I had 5 surgeries while I was in hospital to try and get these tubes to check they hadn't done something wrong. And then this tube went in, he put it, I don't know how he did it, he put it all the way down into my intestine. He tied a knot in it in my intestine using his procedures. I don't know how. It stayed there. And then I put myself on complete nothing, nil by mouth apart from water for 2 weeks. So I just pumped. I got myself an electric pump. I pumped day and night, and I started to gain some weight. And started to get some strength back. And I knew I was feeling better because, first of all, I could hold a conversation, which I was unable to do up until that point, so I had no energy. And then I decided I needed to go swimming. So I remember my mum was here and I was like, can I go swimming? Why not? So I went to the pool and I had my tube in my nose. I tucked it in my swimming hat. I just got in the pool, and it was just like, it was so freeing. I didn't do much swimming, obviously. It wasn't really well enough, but just to lie in the water and think, I'm getting there. We've turned the corner and I'm going to come out the other side of this. So I think for me, that whole time was really difficult, but also really I grew a lot in that time as a person. I had to explore a lot of my own kind of thinking and start to approach things differently, start to listen to my body, because just forcing and efforting, it wasn't working. I had to step back and really say, what is it that my body needs from me right now? And how do I give it to that in the most gentle way that I can? And to trust that even when that wasn't what the medics were telling me I needed to do, I had to trust that the instinct was right that I was getting from my body. So there were times when I had to I didn't ever refuse a treatment, but I did have to tell them at times that I needed something different to happen. And they were very good with me because we'd built up a really good relationship over this time. So they trusted that I wouldn't put myself in danger. But like things like saying I'm just going to have no food now, rather than going with the dietitian's advice of keeping to try soft foods and broths and stuff. I was like, no, I'm just stopping eating, because I knew that I was getting the nutrition from the tube. So I was kind of very careful with any decision making I made. So that's, and then I just was able to build myself back up. And I had a PET scan in May 24 and it was clear. So that was a big relief. So I'd managed to get out of hospital. I'm starting to get my weight back, building my eating back up. And I had results which were positive from a PET scan.
Okay.
So
at that point, you started.
God.
You started looking at things really differently, and you started taking your own healing, am I right, into your own hands as such?
Yeah.
So, like, you have a very detailed scientific mind and you love to study. When was the first time you discovered Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and what made you take it seriously? And was there a particular piece of the science, the research, the language that made you think, oh, this actually makes sense to me?
Yeah. So it's funny, when I first had my diagnosis in 22, my brother-in-law sent me the placebo, You Are the Placebo book. So I read that then, and I really enjoyed it because there's so much science in it, and I just found it really fascinating. But I didn't have any of his meditations, and I didn't know where to get them from. So I kind of read it, and then I moved on to the next book I was reading. And then when I had my second diagnosis, it kind of just kept coming back. So a neighbor then said to me, oh, try these meditations. It's Dr. Joe Dispenza. No, she sent me the course, the formula course to try. So I tried that. When I tried it, I was like, this is really familiar. I feel like I've heard this before. And then I realized it was the same, the author from the You Are the Placebo. So the messages just kept coming at me in numerous different ways. And then this neighbor also sent me a meditation, and I was like, I felt really kind of connected with the meditations when I started to do them. So for me, it was how good he is at teaching. So how clear he teaches, how he takes you through the process. For me, I already had a scientific background. I have a degree in immunology. So I understood the science well. But I think that the way he teaches would allow anyone to access the learning. But for me, he took me far enough into the detail of it that I could kind of think, oh yeah, I'm learning new information here. I'm making connections that I hadn't made.
Can you tell me, Karen, did you ever go to a Dr. Joe Dispenza live event, or was this all just stuff that you had read and the books and stuff?
Yeah, so for about a year, from May 24 onwards, I was starting to do meditations, but like maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And I knew I wasn't really very good at them. I was trying, but I wasn't doing very well. And I was reading his books, I was doing his courses. But I was kind of doing it like someone might, like I might do if I wanted to eat healthily. I'll eat a bit healthy, then I'll have a treat, and then I'll do a bit more. And I wasn't really committed to it. Okay. So because I didn't really know how to be, I didn't realize what commitment looked like. And then in December 24, I had another PET scan, and in that PET scan they found another tumor in my liver. So this is the next one. So I was like, okay, I have to do something differently here. So I started to become more committed to it, and started to focus on food as well, and how to kind of cleaning up my life, if you will, so that being more intentional and more aware about what I'm doing with myself, changing the way I'm swim training as well, so it's less lactic acid producing. I had radiotherapy in that January, and on my liver. And then in May 25, they did another PET scan to check that the radiotherapy had worked. And it had missed the site. So the tumour is still there in my liver. And they said, we just need to do watch and wait now to let this tumour get bigger. So kind of cleaning up my life, if you will, so that being more intentional and more aware about what I'm doing with myself, changing the way I'm swim training as well. So it's less lactic acid producing with me right now, but I can do some stuff. So that's when I signed up to Washington retreat in August last year. So that was my live event that I've been to. I'm actually going to another one later this year as well, but that was my first one.
How was it? Can you explain what happened at the event?
Oh my word. Wow. So it's funny because before I went, I was kind of just like the practical thing. So the cost of it felt really high, and the flights and the hotel and everything, you add it all up and it becomes quite a big cost. And I was thinking, am I worth it? Am I worth this amount of investment? And so I went with that kind of, I don't know if this is the best use of our money type thing, but then, and I'll come back to that in a few minutes. So I went to the retreat. I didn't know anyone at the retreat, and later I found that actually a friend's wife was going, so we ended up sharing a room. But it was just the most incredible event. It was huge, way bigger than I was expecting. So 2,500 people in this enormous room that they call the ballroom. And because I had cancer at the time, I was very grateful to be invited to be a healee, which means that later in the week, after Dr. Joe's done many teachings and taken everybody through lots of meditation practice, there are a subset of the attendees allowed to be a healee. So they receive a healing or 3 healings from the other participants, by which point are experts in meditation or advanced meditators. I was fortunate enough to become a healee, so that was an incredible experience. But for me, before that healing session started, I had moments where I suddenly connected with my feelings. So as I said at the beginning, I didn't have a good connection to vulnerability. I didn't see vulnerability as a positive thing. It was something to not be. So suddenly to be experiencing feelings and connection with my body, that for me, those were big breakthroughs for me. When he took us through the blessing of the energy center type meditations, where we're talking, we're connecting with each one of the meditation energy centers, I suddenly understood the practices I've been doing. Before the retreat, I'd been kind of imagining each energy center from my head and efforting it to make it happen. And at the retreat, I kind of got the knowing, if you will, around those energy centers don't come from the head. They have to come from the body, and you have to almost step aside with your head and allow the feelings to come from each energy center. And that's quite a different kind of experience to when you're just imagining them. So it really took my meditation skill up hugely. And then when I had the opportunity to be a healee on 3 different occasions, it was just magical. The feelings I had in my body before I went in, I was worried that I wasn't going to be a good healee. You hear people in the events who are having these major noisy breakthroughs, and I'm not that sort of person anyway, but I was kind of thinking, I'm going to let my healers down because I'm not going to have some wild kind of healing moment. But I though I was quiet, I did have some really strong healing experiences involving electricity in particular. So nobody touches you in a healing. They're sitting around you, maybe 6 to 8 people, and you're lying on the floor. And Dr. Joe takes you through a meditation where they kind of connect with their hearts. But this is replicated across the room. I don't know how many people, maybe 200 times, 200 pods, something like that in the room. And he gets everybody into a coherent state together. And then your pod directs their love at you on the floor as a healee, everybody else is doing the same thing, but the collective electromagnetic field is just huge from everybody together. And for me, being on the floor receiving the healings just sent my body into some electrical kind of hyper state. So it was like my fingers had been stuck in a plug socket. And that, by the end of the healing, I was like, I couldn't, you know, when you put your finger in the socket and it kind of makes you feel really heavy and you can't really lift your arm or whatever. It felt like that. Yeah. So the first one was a bit of a shock because I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to get off the floor now. And I actually don't think I can. But I managed to ground myself. And the same thing happened in the second one. And then the third one, I think possibly because they also add in other healers from around the world into that one. So the strength of it's even higher. I could feel every cell in my body vibrating. So especially in my liver, like I just knew something was changing. And it was for me the big difference between cognitively and intellectually understanding what's happening and then sort of just knowing it's happening. If you see the shift, what I mean by that, it's not, I don't need someone to explain scientifically what's happened here. I just know it's happened. So and for me that's been the big shift which has happened to me since that time. So since the meditation retreat in August, I've been fully committed to my meditation practice. I practice 2 to 3 times a day. Because I believe that there is something wider than I can explain that is going to influence my healing. Yeah. So that was kind of what my experience of the physical face-to-face event has been.
Amazing. But actually, we met when you actually came to the Dr. Joe Dispenza Dubai meditation group, and you led a meditation which was very specific scientific words, healing language. Can you explain how you actually built that meditation and why the words you used were so important to your own healing process? Yeah.
So 15 years ago, I trained in neuro-linguistic programming. So I am a master coach in NLP, and one of the parts of training is around hypnotic language. So using words to help take people into a semi-hypnotic state, like a trance state. So, and Dr. Joe, I think, has a similar background. I think he has a background in hypnosis. So I think the language that he uses and I used in my meditation have some similarities, because basically it's about kind of taking you into a state where you're not consciously thinking about what's happening. It's like talking to the autonomic nervous system, so bypassing the conscious mind. So in that meditation that you're referring to, I wrote these meditations after I did them with myself, if you will. So they would just come to me intuitively in my own practice, and then afterwards I would try to capture them because I'd realized that this might help somebody else. So.
Well, what do you guys think so far? This is pretty amazing, in detail conversation that we're having. And if you wait to the end, we've got a bonus for you where Karen will share her 5 insights that she's written in her books that you can take action on immediately. But there's so much more to come, so let's go back to Karen.
Because I have a background in immunology, I was aware that I had an immune system that has functions and can do different jobs. And it's the most incredible system that exists in our body. It's highly dynamic, it's adaptive, it can deal with everything and anything, and it's protected us from day dot all the way up to right now. And it's always doing its best to protect me. So sometimes it gets confused and it might create some autonomic autoimmune diseases, but generally it knows how to protect me. But in the case of cancer cells are very smart. So obviously they come from normal cells that have been gone through some form of change. And one of the things that happens with a cancer cell as it gets more advanced in its kind of tumorigenesis is it changes the surface of the cell so that it remains looking like a normal cell on the outside, but the inside it changes its function. And usually when something changes its function on the inside, it shows some markers on the outside that tells the immune system there's something wrong with it. But the cancer cell has learned to mask that so that it still looks like a normal cell. So the immune system just goes past cancer cell, just thinking it's normal. It just kind of carries on with its job, thinking it's got nothing to do here. So I was really curious about that, because thinking, well, because I can't have chemotherapy, I know that I potentially have these little time bombs sitting all over my body of metastatic cells. And I don't want a lifetime of this situation going on where I'm finding a tumor, I'm having a surgery, I'm finding a tumor, I'm having a surgery, until the point where I find a tumor somewhere they can't do a surgery, and then, then I'm in a kind of situation where it can't be treated. So I was like, right, okay, my best chance, I've got nothing to lose here, because nobody's going to treat me anyway. There's no treatment available to me at the moment. So why don't I try and work with my immune system? So I started to talk to my immune system, and for me, I just visualize they're like an army. So you have the generals of each part of the immune system, and for cancer cells and the type of immune response I wanted to create, I needed to talk to the T cells and the natural killer cells, and they're the most advanced cells in our immune system. So they can create a memory, they can adapt, so they can look at the surface marker, and they can really kind of make some very kind of careful decisions about whether this cell belongs or not. But that wasn't going to work, because these cancer cells can mask themselves. So I was aware of scientific research that had shown that the frequency that a healthy cell and a cancer cell vibrate at differs. So and the healthier the cells are, the higher the vibrational frequency it is. So I kind of started to think, well, if that's the case, then though science hasn't proven this yet, as with many of things in this space, why don't I just work with what I know? So I know that I have a highly intelligent immune system that wants to protect me, and it doesn't see the surface markers that the cancer cell's masking, because that's what it's good at. So, but I also know that cancer cells operate at a lower vibrational frequency than healthy cells. So I started to talk to my immune system and ask them not only to look for surface markers for things that shouldn't belong, but actually to start detecting the vibrational frequency of the cells. So I trusted that the immune system was intelligent enough to be able to tell the difference between a healthy cell and an unhealthy cell from a vibrational frequency point of view, even though that's not its normal operating model. So that's what I did. I just started to talk to them and ask them to look for that. I also did the meditation work to elevate the healthy cell vibrational frequency and the unhealthy, because to try and draw them out of an unhealthy state, to make the gap bigger, if you will, between the healthy cells and the unhealthy cells, so that it was easier for the immune system to attack. So that was the thinking in my meditation, and using my hypnosis and NLP training, I was able to just design meditations that help to do this. And I do it for all sorts of things as well, so all sorts of kind of health problems. But that one was just fun, because I think I took everybody into their bloodstream, and we all had a little float around in the body and explored, and then we went to the part of the body that needed the tension. And I think what's really important with this work that I found in one of the conditions that I have identified as essential, and there's 5 that I've identified, but one is called trust. It's about kind of not wanting to fix the outcome. So it's directing my mind at something, but not saying the outcome has to be fixed. So I don't know, in this example of the immune system, I don't know how my T cells are going to do this. How are they going to recognize this change of frequency? So I have to trust that that's going to happen, and I have to let go of the fact that I can engineer a solution exactly in what the outcome is going to look like. I just have to create the right intention, and then allow my intelligent, amazing body and spirit to find a way to make the answer be what I want it to be. But I have to just let go of needing the outcome controlled.
That's incredible, by the way. So a big part of your journey, Karen, seems to be about changing belief, not just positive thinking, but deeply changing who you believed you were and what you believed was possible. What beliefs did you actually have to let go of? And what did you choose to hold on to? What did you choose to let go of?
I'm still learning this one. There's still a lot. So I think I'll get into some specifics in a minute, but I think this may sound strange to some people, but I am a divine being. So I am connected with Source. I am abundant in every way. I have unlimited potential. And I genuinely believe this. Like, this is a huge belief shift. There's a massive but with it, okay? And this is the empowering bit for me. I am all of those things. And at the same time, I live in a 3D shell, which is this body, which has had 52 years of life on this planet. And over that time, it's accumulated all sorts of experiences and developed belief systems and physically experienced different things. And each one of those things over my life has unconsciously, for me, put limitations on what I can access from my divine core soul self. And for me, the empowering and kind of transformational understanding that I've come to through my journey is that my job is not to be more of anything. My job is to let go of the beliefs that restrict me. So a bit like the sun shines its light onto the universe, the same light travels all over the universe, but it has a different impact on what it hits. So it might hit on Earth, it might hit a tree and make a shadow, or it might trigger photosynthesis, or it might burn some skin, or it might light a room, but it's doing something different, but the source of the light is the same. And for me, in my body, the source of my soul is the same, depending, but how I can project and be depends on what these limitations I put around myself are. So, you know, they might be physical, they might be mental, they might be emotional, but they're all there. And my job, if you will, my growth expansion journey job is to start letting go of those and to build my awareness so that I understand what they are, and then I can start to release it. And every time I let go of these limitations, I can let more light come through, so I can be more connected with my soul. And for me, I have created a framework that works for me to sort of challenge myself, if you will, to maintain this type of thinking. So, for example, I'm moving house right now, and it's super easy to sink straight back into all the 3D stuff, emptying boxes, what color paint, where does this go, blah, blah, blah. How do we juggle all these different things at the same time? But I feel myself when I do that I'm losing my connection with this soul part of me. So I have to keep the practice in place and the discipline and the structure to kind of bring myself back on a regular basis, which is where meditation comes in for me. But for me, there's a few things that I discovered when I was writing my book in this space that might be helpful just to touch on. So for me, I identified 5 different conditions that I think my body thrives best in. So I call it the 5 conditions, or a framework. And I'll speak about each one of those in a second. And then there's also a blueprint. So I think there's 2 blueprints that my body holds. So this is a belief. I already held a strong belief that my body had the blueprint for health in it. So in the DNA, in the stem cells of my body, exists a DNA code that is a healthy version of me. Over my time, mutations have happened that have changed cells in my body and held on to, you know, emotional traumas or whatever, and they've changed the behavior of those cells, which causes dis-ease in those cells and results in disease over time. But ultimately, at the bottom line, there are cells in my body that know what health looks like. So I call this the body blueprint. So my body knows at some level what health looks like. If I create the right conditions for my body to exist in, it will find that blueprint. I also, over this experience of reflecting and writing the book, discovered for myself that there's a soul blueprint as well. So like the body's almost like my 3D blueprint, if you will, and my 5D blueprint, if you will, is my soul. So what is it that makes me feel expansive? What is it that makes me feel whole? What is it that makes me feel happy and joyful and blissful? They can, and it's great when they're aligned, you know, that's the perfect time. But when there's a gap between either my body blueprint and my 3D activities and my soul blueprint and my 5D, or, you know, when there's a gap between the blueprint and who I am being, that's where my well-being happens, or my poor well-being. That's where I struggle. So the bigger the gap between the blueprint and my life, the more problems I will have with my well-being. The closer as I close that gap, I am more aligned, I'm more present, and my health will improve. And for me, these 5 conditions are, how do I close that gap? So the book for me has been building that awareness. So I call it Seeing the Gap. That's what I'm calling the book. So seeing the gap for me. And then I'm also, without intending to, starting to write another book, which I didn't plan to, called Closing the Gap. So how do I use this insight to start closing the gap for myself? But that's another book. I'm a long way from being ready for that one. So the 5 conditions that I've identified are about nourishing my body. So how do I create the right conditions for my body to thrive? So that comes in every shape and size. It's unique to me. So sleep, food, diet, fasting, exercise. How do I balance all of those things in the way that works for my body? And like I said, it's absolutely unique. So I could tell you my recipe for me, and it wouldn't work necessarily for you. So it's an experiment of how does this work? How does that fasting window work? How does this type of food feel? How do I train in a way that kind of allows me to still perform as an athlete, but not allow, because the problem when you're training heavily is you're creating a very lactic acid base in your body, and cancer cells like a low pH. So the more training you do, the more you're creating a kind of favorable environment for disease cells to thrive because of the way metabolism works in those cells. So I had to change the way I'm training so that I'm not building up lactic acid in the same way. And the food, everything is like thought through in the same sort of way, from what's happening at a cell membrane level when I'm doing these things, and what's the right kind of combination for my body, and then being really aware, like learning to be more aware about what feedback I'm getting. So, you know, that was I was really not good at that. So I would just ignore all the feedbacks to achieve the goal. So I've had to really change that, and I've done hours and hours of research on food and nutrition, and come up with a solution that works for me. So that's the first one.
I think that's a really lovely point you make there, right? Is that there seems to be so much of these influencers and people online, and they're always talking about, like, do this here, it's going to change your life, or do this here. Like, there's people eating carnivore, there's people who are vegan, there's people, you know, and it really is up to people, as you just pointed out, listening to their own bodies exactly as they are, and it doesn't matter. There's not one size in any way, shape, or form that fits all, like this here. So, like, beyond this meditation, you know, work that you're doing, and can you give us a wee bit of an insight more into the emotional work that you've done on yourself, your daily discipline that did play a part in your healing journey, and what did a normal day for you actually look like on your healing journey?
Yeah, so so my most acute period, if you will, was May last year until Christmas, February time last year. That was when my body was most in crisis, if you will. I was carrying a tumour, nothing could be done about it. I'd got to the point where I was like, I'm not accepting this anymore. So I was very, very disciplined during that period. It's a period of immense learning for me as well, around what, you know, building this awareness that I've just mentioned, and testing and trialing lots of things. So during that period of learning, from a food, and, you know, I would do all sorts. I'd wear a glucose monitor to see how different foods might change my blood glucose levels, because I understand that glucose plays a really big role in metabolism, and cancer cells have more mitochondria than healthy cells. They love glucose, like love it, much more than healthy cells. So finding a balance to how my body is processing glucose, apart from all the other wider huge health benefits from doing that, was really important to me. And fasting as well, using fasting to again, knowing that fasting reduces glucose in the blood, testing my blood glucose through that process to check that that was happening. And then also triggers a process called autophagy, which is where the cells clean themselves out. But because the cancer cells are being deprived of glucose, they hate that and they get really unhappy. Healthy cells love it, so they start to process food using or get their energy from ketones. And so it's another perfect environment for healthy cells to thrive. So from a day-to-day point of view, during that acute period, it was just constantly testing things. So, you know, I'd be monitoring my sleep, I'd be monitoring my food. And I'm not like looking, I don't have a lab set up at home. I'm just being aware. Sometimes I'm wearing a blood glucose level. I think I wore the blood glucose monitor last 2 weeks. I think I maybe did it 2 or 3 times, just specifically. So I did it during a fast to see what happens to my blood glucose then, and I, you know, kind of just wanted to understand my body. So on a day-to-day basis, the routine I got into after I've been through that process of learning, because some things work and some things don't. So you try something and it's not work, so you forget that one and you move on to the next one. So now my routine around kind of the nourishing my body would look like a pescatarian, well, mainly vegetarian diet with some fish, following Walter Longo's kind of thinking around longevity, and also his fasting mimicking diet. So I would I tried lots of different long fasts. Some of them affected my heart rhythm, which obviously I can't have happen because of the previous problems. So this particular approach is very low calories for 5 days, rather than a shorter, like 3-day or whatever fast, which was too much for my heart. But this again brings me back into autophagy. And I did one recently, and it's funny, when I was doing it, I was like, literally, I was in the cell. I was kind of cheering on my cells during the fasting, going, come on, this is perfect. You know, the cancer cells are hating it. But we were like, I was cheering them on. So I ended up writing a meditation for my fasting cells, and, you know, kind of things like that. So I just end up coming up with these ones as things come up for me. And then from an exercise, I would I swim 3 or 4 times a week and go in the gym, try and keep my muscle levels high, because again, I know that that's good for long-term health. So, and then sleep, I try and make sure I get 8 hours every night. So I'll do my meditation when I wake up in the morning. I'll try to do a short one during the day. And then I'll do one as I go to bed at night. So I kind of set my day up with the meditations and the food and the fasting and the sleep, so that it's all managed. But it sounds really kind of robotic when I say it like this, but it's just become my normal pattern now. It doesn't feel like I'm doing anything difficult now. You know, I kind of just, I've got into a routine with it.
Well, you've just built a habit.
I've just built a habit around it. And like I said earlier, the first condition I'd identified was the nourished body. The second was a directed mind. So this kind of intention around how I'm meditating. So I'll do the Dr. Joe meditations, which have been absolutely amazing. But I kind of am just naturally also creating a clear intention through this understanding that I've got of my body around what I want to happen. So the directed mind is quite specific. So if I took a meditation example like Love Your Body, in that meditation, he asks you to connect with your heart, and then you go to another part of your body that might need your attention. So I would choose my liver, obviously, and then I would also be activating this thinking around my immune cells at the same time. So I would like layer in my understanding along with the meditation. So it's again like just understanding, for me it was about, what do I want my mind to, what do I want to direct my attention at? The other conditions that I found really powerful for me, and if we go right back to this in the beginning of this interview, that was where I kind of started to, when I reflected, I started to see the problem. I call the third one freeing my heart. So I talk about the lack of vulnerability and the culture in my growing up days of, you know, we're not kind of connected with our emotions, we just get on with it, a stiff upper lip type approach. And then I become aware through all the meditation practice that I've got blockages all over the place when it comes to the energy centers, and that so a lot of that is because I am just so close. I'm just so unfamiliar with using, allowing my heart to feel emotion, and I had to go through a process of really working hard at freeing those emotions and being okay with being vulnerable, and it's still an enormous challenge for me, and I'm still working hard at it. But when I mentioned earlier about the difference between my soul blueprint and the gap, so for me, this is where the gap is quite big. So when I'm being extremely invulnerable and non-vulnerable, and I'm focused on delivering at all costs, and I'm not listening to my body, and I'm not listening to any of my emotions, I'm not connected with this soul part of me. I'm in the 3D completely. So this loving my body, freeing my heart is very much about opening up that connection so that I can be more connected with my soul, and from that I can close that gap. So that's that one. And then the fourth one is about a trusting spirit. So this is about believing with absolute certainty that there's more out there than this 3D body. So that experience I had on the floor in Washington, and the many mystical experiences I've had since, the synchronicities, everything I have no doubt, like 100% certainty that there's something more going on. Beyond the senses that we've been given, the 5 senses we've been given in our body, there are we can sense light, we can sense smell, we can sense all these things, but there's others that we just haven't got. The animals can sense, and there's more that even animals and humans and not anything on the planet, we can't sense that. So I absolutely believe that. And that plays a role, because it means at times when my intuition is saying, do this, not that, I follow it, even though I can't explain why. And sometimes it feels
for you. How is that?
Well, that's why I'm in the UK, because that's the intuition telling me that I have to come back. So far it's going really well. And when I followed these intuition guidances, I've had some really kind of very strong synchronicities or breadcrumbs thrown in my path. And, I'm kind of just trusting. I'm in the process now. I'm, with the book, I've written it, and I'm now kind of just trusting with effort. It's not that I'm just sitting here waiting for it all to land on my head. With effort, trusting that I will be guided to how, because the intention behind the book was really to help me to process everything that's happened with the freeing heart thinking. But also I very strongly get the intuition feeling, that trusting feeling, that this book will go into the hands of the people that need to read it.
Yeah.
So, that will happen. How? I've got no idea. Yeah. But I trust that completely. So I'm just carrying on with the process of getting it edited and getting it ready, and speaking to lots of people, and that something will happen. I just know it's going to.
So what actually made you decide to write the book in the first place, and who did you write it for? Because you say about yourself, and what do you actually hope people will feel or understand after reading your book?
So what made me I was encouraged by a friend who to start to write, but I tried to write in the past, but every time I tried to write, all these doubts would come up. What have you got to say? Why are you good enough to write? Who's going to want to read what you want to read? You've written, it's no point, and all the rest of it. All the things that always hold me back, make me stop what I'm doing in mid-flow and just give up on it. So, and I have there's a lot of history there with me having that pattern. And then somebody introduced me to a writing agent. So I dictate what I want to say rather than physically write it, I actually dictate it. And for me, that was absolutely freeing, because I could just let the words flow with no judgment from my very active judgy head to tell me to shut up. I would just allow this to happen. And suddenly, as I got more and more into a flow of it, the wisdom that would come through me was unrecognizable from what I thought was there. So I started to trust the process, and I just started to let it go. And who did I write it for? I wrote it for me, really, to just to process everything that I'd been through. And because I was I became more and more aware of how the cultural background for me had limited my ability to do this stuff. I was like, I'm going to explore this. I just want to explore it. What's the harm? There's no harm in me exploring this at all. I didn't write it with an intention for it to be even read by anyone else. The intention was it would help one person, and that is me. So, if anyone else is helped by it, then I'll be eternally grateful and delighted for them that it's helped them. But that's not, I didn't write it because I want to fix other people. I wrote it because I want to fix me. And that's the wrong word, because I'm not broken. I just need to remove the shell or the restrictions that exist around me to allow myself to be more unlimited and to allow my light to shine through. So I wrote the book to understand that, and now I'm continue to write, because as I write, I can see the cracks appearing, and in a good way, and the light can find ways through, and I can let go of limiting beliefs and limiting activities and behaviors that have held me back, because the shell was too tightly squashing my soul. Now I'm kind of allowing it to expand, and I can expand as a person.
Hi everyone, let us know what you think in the comments below so far. This is a pretty amazing question. Now the question still remains to find out whether or not Karen has actually been healed herself, or if this is still a situation that is ongoing. Thank you so much for watching the podcast, and let's go back to Karen.
So the fifth condition is a loving community. So this is about, first of all, identifying and accepting that you are a living community. So you are 37 trillion cells that are a community that need to be loved. And also that everything around you, online, physically, whatever, is part of your community, and how you show up with your energy has an impact on you, and it has an impact on the people around you. So choosing who and what you invest your time and effort into being involved with, and how you show up to that, has an impact on your cell membrane, because your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is triggered. If you're turning up and you're showing up in your life in a way that is very kind of negative and complaining, then you're activating a sympathetic nervous system, which is very kind of fight and flight, and it sends signals to the cell membrane that tell it to be ready for something difficult to happen. And it's not a state that allows yourselves to be at ease. It's not a repair and restoring state. If you're showing up for yourself on a day-to-day basis, and the people around you in a very kind of contented and happy and trusting way, and you're at peace with yourself, then you're going to be activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which will allow you to repair and restore. And for me, that 5 conditions of the nourished body, the directed mind, the loving, the freeing the heart, the trusting the spirit, and the loving community, when they all come together, that's when you have the opportunity to start to close the gap for yourself in your life, by looking at your life across all of those 5 areas and trying. And you don't, some people, you might not want to do it all in like I did, but if, I would just say, why not just look at your life across some of those lenses and see what you can learn about yourself. So that's, those are my 5 conditions that I've created in my life, and how I'll use this.
Wow, thank you so much. You've made it this far. Thank you so much for watching to this point in the podcast. You're an amazing viewer. Much love to you all out there. And let's go back to Karen and find out if she's healed or not.
Yeah, so Karen, look, thank you so much for sharing all those insights. I'm sure the audience would really want to know right now, how did those insights impact your health? And do we have a healthy Karen, or are we still going through the same situation as we've been talking about the whole way through this episode?
As I said earlier, I had a scan in May 25, which showed that the tumour was still in my liver. So this was after the radiotherapy, and that was when I doubled down on everything and really started to make progress. I went on the Dr. Joe retreat. I changed my diet. I did all the fasting, did all the healthy body stuff. And then I also swim. So I was racing in national championships in the UK for masters, and I had that planned for September. So I had to adjust, for October. So I had to adjust all of my training for that as well. So I kind of had a really focused summer while I was watching and waiting from a medical point of view for them to see what was happening. And then in October, I had the next round of scans. So they start with an MRI. And when they did the MRI in October, I was in the machine and I just had this strong feeling that it was just a bit too soon with the scan. So I went through the scan, and when I went to see my oncologist to get the results, she said the tumour had grown by 3 times from what it was in May. And I was so disappointed. And she said it has some strange characteristics as well. And I stupidly Googled it. And when I Googled it, they didn't sound very good. So I was really very, very disappointed. And I just couldn't believe it. I was doing everything right. And I was like, I actually can't believe this. So she said, we need to do a PET scan now to find out if there are other tumours and if there are any other tumours anywhere else now. Oh. So we did the PET scan, and because I was in Dubai, it's so efficient. So I think probably within 2 weeks, I'd had the PET scan and the results. And when I went to get the results for the PET scan, she said, there's something strange going on with this tumour. So just a tiny bit of insight into what a PET scan does. So a PET scan has a glucose molecule, and it attaches a radioactive marker onto it. So it's like the two things are together. And when you do a PET scan, you fast beforehand, and then they give you some glucose. And because all your cells want glucose, they take up that glucose, and they also take up the radioactive marker that's on the surface of it. But because cancer cells are more active metabolically, they take up more. So you see the cancer cells shining brighter on the scan because they've taken up more of the glucose. And then they scan you looking for those radioactive markers. And for the scan I had at that point, they did 2 scans. They did one, and then you wait 40 minutes or something like that, and then they do a second one. And for those cancer cells, usually you see that it's called avidity, this brightness of the marker. The avidity usually is constant between the 2 scans to show that the cancer cells are still taking up the glucose that's been injected into your system. So that would be the normal results. And then they compare your kind of background normal amount of glucose take up to the scan take up, and they can kind of give you a score. So how avid, or what level of avidity you've got. So the higher the score, the more active your tumour is. And in my case, in this scan, the first scan showed some take up by the tumour, and the second scan showed normal activity. So it was a really strange situation. And basically the conclusion was that it looks like the tumour is dying. Wow. So I was like, because like I said, I just knew it wasn't right. I just sensed it wasn't right. So I was like, yes. So then obviously that was really motivating for me. So I then I then had another scan 6 months later planned to check. And I just did everything even more focused, more reflective, more meditation, everything. And then I had a follow-up scan, again starts with an MRI and then a PET scan, and the MRI showed nothing. And then the PET scan showed nothing. So in February, I have no evidence of disease, and that's where I'm sitting right now with this. So it's just been incredible. And we'll see how things progress. But I feel like for me, this combination of the 5 conditions and this understanding and the work, which now feels very kind of not like normal routine, is me finding a balance and getting me closer to what my body blueprint needs. So I'm not going to say that, you know, let's hope that this is a long-term thing for me. But I suppose what I want people to know is that, you know, for me anyway, there's been a way forward with this. And I wouldn't want people to get false hope, and I wouldn't want people to feel disappointed, you know, around that. But what I'm saying, what I'd like people to know is that there's some control you can place on yourself in addition to the help that the doctors are giving you to help put yourself in the best conditions for health in the future.
And so a lot of the testimonials Dr. Joe Dispenza especially would put across was people have been very grateful for their trauma, their loss, their PTSD, their cancer.
Yeah.
Can you tell me just a little bit about, are you looking at it from that point of view? Are you grateful now that this here situation has come to you, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely, completely grateful for it. So I'm grateful for the growth it's given me. I'm grateful for the good and the bad times, because each time you're faced with a corner, or you know, you're faced with a difficult situation, you have a choice to make. And the more times that you choose yourself and loving yourself and kind of moving forward, the stronger you get. So I think those choices just accumulate over this sort of experience. And I just feel like I'm in a much better place as a person than I was before this happened. But I also know that I feel very grateful that I was kind of blessed with a kind of attitude of looking for the positive to start with. And I didn't let this kind of sink me down at any point, apart from in the couple of moments where it was really very frightening. So, you know, I'm very kind of grateful for having that base in place already that allowed me to move forward in a positive way and seek the opportunity out of this and the opportunity to expand and grow as a person, which is what I feel like I'm now doing hugely, and I wasn't doing before. And I wasn't even aware I wasn't doing before. So.
Well, look, you've shared a beautiful, beautiful journey with us today. But the type of people, the audience that will be watching this, for anybody that's out there right now that's listening, that is sick, they're frightened, they're losing hope, what would you say to them from your heart? You know, if you get out of your way, not as somebody who's come through, not a woman, not a survivor, student of science, what would you actually say as someone who's lived through this pretty awful journey to somebody who is listening right now?
I'd just say that you are loved. And when I say that, I don't mean that necessarily just by the humans in your life or the cats and dogs in your life. I mean, you are loved by this infinite wisdom that exists in our world. And that love exists inside you. And whatever is going on for you, that's there for you at all times. And you can lean into that, and you can use that to help give you strength and support. And I think that none of us know how long we have on this planet. But what we do want to do, whether that's a short or long period of time, is we want to have the best experience we can, and we want to be experiencing the most joy and love that we can in this time that we have. So I would just say, use the time you have to lean into who you are and love yourself, and start to explore some of these things possibly that I've talked about, if you've got time to do that. And if not, then just trust that you will be loved always.
Very beautiful. But this is something that I've witnessed around me when you get into the work, is you can't really force anybody into the work. They have to find it in their own way. And you can't lecture to anybody in the world about what your transformations have been. And of course, we've all been indoctrinated in a certain way, and that's not to say that medical intervention doesn't work in millions of cases worldwide. Where would we be without it? But also, as you've just alluded to, it's everybody's own personal process that should be freeing themselves. It's a very personal matter for each individual. So just on that, if there was a young girl out there, which I'm sure there's plenty of them, who's just found out that she's got cancer or that she's very sick in some way, or what advice would you give to that 15, 16, 17-year-old or younger person in you, or the younger Karen in a sense, about life right now and what you've learned in the last 4 years?
First of all, I have a teenage daughter of that age, and I'm not sure she'd listen to a word I said. So that's
Yeah, that's good. That's typical of all kids, though, right? All of our own kids.
Yeah, but I think, what wisdom would I share? That, there's so many things. So something I haven't talked about today at all yet is forgiveness. And I think forgiveness is a really important part of healing. So holding on to problems or negative experiences and letting that energy kind of sit in you and kind of chew away at you at whatever level that's happening, physically, mentally, that's really harmful for you. And often it's not harmful for whoever caused the situation in the first place at all. It's you that's being harmed. So I would just say, firstly, just to love yourself enough to let that go. You're not condoning anybody else's behavior by doing that, and you still have to put boundaries around things, but holding on to that sort of negative energy in your body is damaging. So, kind of explore that. And for me, letting go of that, used a method called the Journey Method with Brandon Bays, has written a book, and that was really powerful for me for letting go of those sorts of things. For helping to free my heart in that way. I think is ask for help, talk to people. There's people like me and many others around who would bend over backwards to help people who are struggling in these situations. So just reach out, and then really have a look at yourself. In the book I'm writing, I've written some kind of coaching questions to help people just to sit back and look at their own life. And yeah, if you're in a crisis, a health crisis, then you might want to look at everything and kind of go in full on. But if you're not in a crisis, then you can still use these ideas to help improve your life and hopefully prevent future crises. So, maybe have a look at those coaching questions around, how are you looking after your body? What are you doing from an intention point of view? Are you clear on what it is you want to achieve? Where are you at with vulnerability and forgiveness and loving yourself? And, kind of how comfortable are you in your own skin? And then, where is your faith? Is it attached to a religion or not? And is that serving you well? But where is the faith at some point, in some shape or form? And then who's around you to support you, and reach out and lean into that and bring your energy into that, and just know that you are completely worthy of that love from others and from yourself and from a higher source, and just kind of use that to help your healing and help see the light in the future for you.
Now, Karen, after everything you've been through and everything you've now created, What does the future look like for you? And for everyone listening who feels inspired by your story, where can we get your book and follow your work? Come on.
Oh my gosh, I wish I had a good answer to that one. I need to sort it out. Right. So what does the future look like for me? If I have a dream, and this is me being vulnerable now, because speaking about a dream for me would have been not something I would have done in the past, because I wouldn't have ever felt that I was worthy of having a dream like the dream I've got. So bear with me, it's still uncomfortable for me to talk about this. So the direction I suppose I'm receiving from somewhere else on this is that this is important information that will help people to move forward in their life in whatever shape and form that means for them, by providing them with some ideas that might help them to just to take the first steps forward. So the dream is that I'm able to facilitate some of that through this process. Now, I'm not a big name or anything like that. I'm just me. I don't even have an Instagram profile right now. I need to sort everything out. I'm right at the beginning. I'm just normal like you. So I'm doing this because I'm feeling really guided and directed to do it. And the dream is that I can fulfill that hope or that direction that's been offered to me, and that I can kind of provide whatever is meant to be provided through me to you. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm remain committed and open and honest and vulnerable in what I'm doing, in the hope that it helps you.
Well, look, Karen, thank you so much for such a beautiful story. I'm sure the audience is going to be like loving this. So they are. But look, definitely make me a promise that you'll definitely come back, because like the story doesn't stop here. It feels as if the story is just starting here.
Yeah.
So please, as you get through, let's stay in touch. Definitely share with everything. And once you have the links for the books and stuff like that there, we'll post a link below this here YouTube video.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. So if you like this here kind of work, please put a like and a subscribe. And please, if you need any help whatsoever out there, please make a comment below. I'm pretty sure there's a whole community of us that would love to see if you want to share your own insights. And if you even want to, and you've come through a healing journey yourself, you're more than welcome to come onto the podcast. All my details are here. So everyone, thank you so much for listening today, and hopefully we'll have many more podcasts like this to come, from normal people telling normal stories of healing, of life, and how they find their happiness, their bliss.